Hi there. This is Amanda Beth with Amanda Beth Healing, and today I am joined with my dear friend Christy Boyd Johnson. Christy has filled many places in working with me. She's a friend. She is a peer in so many things that I do. She's been my developmental editor for my last two books, and she's also an education specialist. So I have asked her to come along and help me talk through this whole process today. So, hi, Christy.
Hi, Amanda. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, I'm so glad. So, I wanted to start my live today with a question. Have you ever been made to feel like your basic needs were an inconvenience?
Oh, yes.
Absolutely. And my daughter was just home this weekend and we were comparing restaurants. And I was saying, hey, have you been to this restaurant, that restaurant? And later in life, during college, she developed a red food dye allergy, which has it's made shopping for holiday candies and goodies a big challenge. I mean, we just kind of don't do those anymore.
Right.
Um, but when she goes to a restaurant, I was saying, we'll just ask him. She's like, no, it's an inconvenience. I don't want to be a bother, and so it really restricts where she goes out to eat. And say, the reality is, there's about 200,000 people that visit the emergency room every year in the United States. You know, she's not being difficult. She's only advocating for her ability to live. And as I
Right.
was talking with her and realizing in so many of my careers, I have advocated for other people. And just recently, advocating for myself with the publication of this next book. So I just really wanted to talk more about this whole neurodivergent thing.
Yeah. Well, it starts in school when when you're forced into fit into a little box and you're somehow made to feel like you're wrong if you're different. It happens all the time. Everyone has to fit in here.
Well, and there's the grading scale, and I know that, my own experience, I was diagnosed as dyslexic and dysgraphic when I was in college because I was a really rough spot in life, and I ended up in the school counselor's office at the college, University of North Dakota. They were great and wonderful people, and that counselor was able to see that what I was struggling with wasn't, a traditional depression or anything. And he referred me on to the Disabled Student Services, where this diagnosis of dyslexia and dysgraphia came out.
Mhm.
Later in life, I got the official diagnosis of ADD, adult ADD, which, as I look at things, and I've always hidden that, that this is not something I don't want anyone to think I'm using it as an excuse or a crutch, but I do things differently. My brain was built differently than most people, and it all came to a head when I was proofreading the formatting for my most recent book that it was going to release today, and I stuck to my guns. And I know the publisher was not really. Um, she was very receptive when I stuck to my guns, and I said, being neurodivergent, this is how my brain processes, and this is the way that I really, really need it to be, so that I can read it
Mhm.
and make it go. So hopefully you can help to talk. I don't think I was just being whiny. I think there's a lot of this, and the difference that comes up between being neurodivergent or being neurotypical. And neurotypical, yes, it's a greater percentage of the population, but they've got that plasticity to their brain. If someone who doesn't have these other things going on, they're able to read something and go, oh, that's different, but they keep reading. Neurodivergence, when we come across something that's difficult for us to process, I myself, I'm going to put the book down. I'm not going to finish it. I won't continue.
Well, there's a lot in what you just said. There's just so much there because the the other side of being neurodivergent, which that just means you think differently. This should not become. I hope this does not become a negative label out there.
No,
Be-
we have a different operating system. If you look
Different.
at computers, it's like comparing Windows to Mac to Linux to all of those. It's just the way our brain operates because it doesn't have anything to do with being a quirk or being and it certainly doesn't have anything to do with intelligence.
Oh gosh, no. In fact, well, intelligence typically IQ has been measured by certain factors, and again, it's in a little box. Logical sequencing, pattern recognition, all this. But really, in life, I don't really think that's intelligence. That I mean, it's really a tiny.
No, intelligence is not playing with the little red and white blocks.
And then there's,
I've
then
taken a few of those tests.
yeah, they came out with the EQ, the emotional quotient, which I think is way more important
Mm.
because that's where it encompasses the ability to process things, the ability to handle things, because this world we live in, we have to handle stuff every day, unless we're hiding under a rock.
Right, absolutely. Every single day there is
Well,
something that comes up.
yeah.
It used to be the question, the sequencing of what do you do if you find what was it? If you find an envelope it has an address, it has a return address, and it has a postage stamp, and you find it laying on the sidewalk. What are you going to do with it?
Mhm.
And the EQ has taken that to so many other examples of being able to
Yeah.
sequence things and come up with an emotionally sound answer because it's the emotional quotient.
Right, right. Because it isn't, there's no one cut. That's the thing about intelligence at all, is there is never one cut and dried answer, with the possible exception of math problems, like 2 plus 3 is 5, period. But other than that, there's always a way to figure something out, to see something different. And I would like to point out as well that some of the most brilliant and innovative ideas come from neurodivergent people because they think outside the box, because they look at things differently
Well,
than the way
my
they're.
girlfriend and I talk about this all the time because she has grandchildren who have different varying levels of neurodivergency and in her trying to understand how they process and how she can present things to them because they're also homeschooled.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, my brain, and I know you and I talked about this too back with my first book. It's like, being an adult survivor of dyslexia, and being able to now put into words how my brain talks. I mean, there's all kinds of reels on social media that are, I think, pretty accurate, but sometimes they're a little dramatic. But just how different brains process things differently. When someone gives me directions to go somewhere, in my brain, I am driving there. I am seeing all the landmarks. I actually see it. I make a 3D model of everything in my brain.
That's a.
And and I do that like with crochet patterns. And when I was back in the day when I was making teddy bears, I would take the cotton print. I knew exactly what the bear would look like when it was finished, and customers would come to me and they're like, "How do you see that? How do you see that?" And it's like, "You mean you don't?
Yeah.
You don't?" And it's like, "Oh, well, and so that is, just, and I think that's why some of those inventions, some of those gadgets, because different wiring allows you to see things differently. It doesn't make it wrong. Does it make it more right?
No.
Uh, but it's just different. So while we're going along here, I'm curious if anybody else in our listening audience, if you've ever been made to feel like an inconvenience, drop a yes in the comments. Because we're not an inconvenience. We're just different. And until you find your voice to speak up and say, "Wait a minute. Can you repeat that?" And keep asking until your brain is able to process it. And I find that when I'm talking to other people to relate to them how I understand things, you know, you you
Mhm.
keep talking. Don't shut anybody out. So it's kind of that stepping into your power and claiming your space about everything that you do in life.
Absolutely. And also, if you have children who are in school right now, when they're telling you this is too hard, I don't understand, or younger children, a lot of times it's I feel sick, I don't want to do this, I can't do this, I'm stupid. Those are all screaming red flags that they are not going to fit into the box of school. And school, it's I can't even believe how awful it is with the way that they do it now. It's like there's one way, and it's so bad now that all the teachers have to teach exactly the same material in exactly the same way in every single classroom. There's
Oh,
not
it,
even room for the teacher to be creative.
and so me learning of a learning difference, because they
Mhm.
call it a learning disability, and it's not a disability, it's a learning difference, because I
Yeah,
clearly learn. And so when it came with my oldest daughter, when it came for her going through school, I was doing her homework with her every single night, so I knew the way they were presenting it to her because I didn't want to confuse her. And then, as turns out, she has a different processing error as well. And so advocating for her. And there's a difference when I advocated for my clients in my professional paid job as a social worker
yeah.
versus when I get to go all mama bear when you don't take care of my kid. And needless to say, my daughter is very successful, and she has found the ways to adapt what she is doing in life so that she works very well with those things. But also, I found myself as a mom being hypersensitive to that and making sure that every teacher understood her. And and there's so many ways for parents, and I look at
Yeah.
the school system, like you said, it's so difficult because if they don't test into getting weighted and on this waiver or that waiver, then it comes down to the parent to advocate. And not all parents are aware of how to advocate for their child. And I feel so badly for those parents
Yeah.
and those children that don't have someone to steer the boat for them, because everyone's not entitled. Everyone deserves an opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
And
And the number
oftentimes it's really simple. It's a simple change they needed.
simple, it's always a simple change. It's always finding that one way. But the number one way that always works is to slow down. Because I guarantee you that no matter what it is, they're pushing too hard, too fast, and they're not allowing the brain to process in the way it needs to process. There is only one kind of brain that can go that fast. And most kids, this most kids thing, that is not real.
No.
It's most of us. It doesn't exist. So that whole idea needs to go away. That, oh, most kids fit in this, so we'll do it this way. No,
No, because
no.
you're leaving some really brilliant brains outside
Yes.
of that. And the thinking process, the depression, the I'm not worthy, the all of the negative things that come into that when you leave those children and later those adults behind because they didn't fit your mold.
Right. The trauma in that, yes, the trauma in that is real because kids 100% of the time, kids turn it inward on themselves. They say to themselves, I can't do this, therefore I must be stupid. It is 100% of the time, and no one is ever going to tell me. I taught for 30 years. No one's ever going to tell me that's not real because I've seen it.
Oh, and I remember, so the first time that it came up as an issue where my parents were willing to look at it. My father met with a school, and the first time I was tested, I was a sophomore in high school, and remembering the test, and then I remember answering the one question about what is glass made of, and I knew it was made of sand and heat, and they're like, well, how did you know that? Well, it was on Superman because it was on Shazam because he went to the sand and he made a big mirror or a big lens that then was a lightning bolt that shot the danger out of the sky. You know, they're like, how did you know that? But I also remember the results of that test. And when they presented it to my father, they were like, yes, you're right. Amanda is a very brilliant child, but she's just lazy.
Oh, the lazy thing. That is
And and then when I was in college,
no.
um, very, very distraught, not wanting to continue to live because I knew the information, but when I tested, it didn't show, and I was failing college. And when they called up my results, they got my results from high school, and they said it was plain as day right there. But they said likely the school district didn't know how to handle it or how to process it, didn't have a word, whatever. But they said, it's clear. And so at the point, my first semester in college was a 1.12 GPA. I was not partying. I was not working lots of hours. I was not any of that. I was studying. I was staying up all night. I was studying. I was doing all the things that I thought I needed to do.
Yeah.
And then my last semester of college, after learning how my brain learns, learning what I need to input that information and being able to do it. So 12 credits is full time. I was carrying 22 credits my final semester of school, and I had a 3.75 GPA.
Yep.
So
Yep.
anybody who's out there who is neurodivergent or who is not succeeding at the rate that you're capable of, put a drop a comment in there, ND, if you know, or if you know someone who is neurodivergent, put a heart in those comments, and find, but keep searching and keep finding, because when you find the key to that lock and you find the order of operations, and I know it's come up with me publishing a book. How do I come up with the information? How do I do it? What are the steps that I do? Because one of my big things is spelling. Spelling is a really difficult thing for me. I live for those little squiggly lines on the computer
Yeah.
that show me. And so I have a process that I use that allows me to get my thoughts out of here and into paper and to share with the world. And
I would like to say that English is a very difficult language because it draws from so many others. And if we spoke Spanish, for example, which is a completely phonetic language, you wouldn't have dyslexia problems because it's phonetic. And so when you hear the sound ah, it's always an A, and you know that. And because dyslexics typically have excellent memory, they have to memorize. That's one of their coping mechanisms.
yeah.
And so it's much easier in a language like Spanish that's completely phonetic than in a language like English, which is not. Although it's more phonetic than they teach you, which is unfortunate because if they gave kids more of the actual rules and just instead of pretending I can talk. I have a dyslexic mouth today. Everything is a sight word which it's not. Then that would help the kids a lot if they did a
Well,
lot more with that.
and in finding why I was so committed to this new book coming out being formatted differently. And
Mm.
I know every publisher is going to look at this book and go, self-published, and it's not. It's in my opinion, it's neurodivergent friendly, but having the stats to go with it and to back it up, that this isn't just my quirks and my little pet peeves. When I did that deeper dive into the information, yeah, words being in all caps doesn't have anything to do with screaming. You can scream at me all day long. The issue is the dyslexic part of the brain is where the language center is. And dyslexics identify the shapes of the words. So it is kind of that sight reading. And when a word is written in all capitals, then all the letters look very similar and we can't discern what that word is.
Hmm.
So it's a common thing. And there were parts of my book that the formatter formatted in all caps, and it was just like, no, that's not how I sent it to you.
Yeah. Which, there's levels of that because first of all, my personal opinion about your book is that it is going to reach an audience that has heretofore been ignored. And it's going to open up their thinking, their awareness, their processes. And by the way, I've read your book now two, three times, and it's a beautiful book. You must read it. And the second thing is that this rigid, people are taught that there's only, we do it this way, and that's the only way. But that's what makes us feel like our soul is stifled. Like, like we can't breathe because we're always being forced to fit into this box. And so I personally think people like you who are doing brave things like publishing books, in spite of being told you can't do it, um, is because remember the first I have to tell I'm going to tell on you the very first book you did, you said to me, I don't think I can do this, and I said yes you can, and that was it. We went
Well,
forward.
in my very first book, I had written it, and I was in a group of people. I was in a network of people, and everyone there was publishing a book, was publishing the magazine. I'm like, yeah, that's nice for y'all. I'm not doing it. I have no interest in doing this. And then I applied to work with a coach, and they wanted your life story, and I wrote my life story. I was writing it till like 2 or 3 in the morning. It's like, oh, that's your book. That's your story. You can do this. And then I did it, and then I started to work with you as a developmental editor, and the what had, and someone I was in another book network, and they were saying, there's 6 types of editors. Okay, that's lovely. I have a developmental editor. And what Christy was able to offer to my book is, did I have enough of the story, and where did I tell too much of the story? Because although it's my story, and this is the thing that authors have a really hard time with, I'm writing for the reader. The
Right.
book is for the reader. And so that's what Christy's role has been in my books, is to let me know where I'm losing people or where I'm taking them down a dirt road that's unnecessary, so that people don't lose interest in the book. And then there's, your beta readers, your alpha readers, your line readers, your,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, there are so many different things. And I have been very, very blessed. And one of what I would call a beta reader, a an associate of mine. We're not close friends. I know we're going to be much closer after this book publishes. Someone who doesn't really know me, and I know I didn't think about it at the time. She has a level of neurodivergence as well. And she's a homeschool mom, and she went through my book line by line, read the story, made comments in the margins, made suggestions, said, you lost me here. What does this really mean? And it was heartwarming to see how someone who's not in the thick of it, because when you're in the thick of it, it all makes sense. And so that, gave me some suggestions as to where to expand and to change things up in my book. And so I am absolutely grateful for her time that she invested in going with this book. And, everyone that it's not just what the author writes. There are so many other pieces to that I think that sometimes when people self-publish, which was my first one, I was originally going to just self-publish, and I'm so glad I didn't. But, you know, making those changes delayed me from my original fantasy release date. And now putting in the actual formatting changes to stick with how my brain, and I feel that, a lot of my clients tend to fall into this neurodivergent at some level. And so to meet the needs of my clientele, I think that this book is going to be amazing. And those of you who are not neurodivergent, that fall into that other 75-80% of the population, you're going to look at it and go, oh, okay. And you're going to keep reading, you know? But, if you think about it, that if 20% of the population is neurodivergent, which most recent statistics are, if you're in a room with 10 people, that means that two of those people are processing with a different system. They're interpreting the world differently
Yeah.
than the other eight people in the room.
I actually think that it's a higher statistic than that. I don't
Oh,
think it's low.
I don't think everyone is tested or
Yeah.
documented, and yeah, I think it's and I would like people to have that freedom and to, I mean, that was the beauty of audiobooks,
Yep.
to meet those time space things.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I am a big advocate for audiobooks, especially with kids, because you know what? Kids, they're little. They get tired. And then they're expected to read 20, 30 minutes and an hour every day after school, plus do their homework. And that's tough. But listening to an audiobook with takes away the stress on the eyes and the brain of reading the words, which in many cases they're learning to read as they're reading. So you've got an added weight on them, but it takes that part away. But it still activates their imagination, their creativity, their comprehension, their vocabulary. I can even everything, and it accelerates that.
Right.
So, yeah,
Yeah, it's making everything accessible. And
yes,
accessibility isn't lowering the standards,
yeah.
but it's raising participation, And my girls, I am so proud. My girls are big readers. I mean, they are reading 3 and 4 books at a time. I would go by and go, it's 3 in the morning, stop reading. They love to read, and I think that's amazing, and it
Yeah.
makes my heart happy because that's
Yeah.
something that I have not had enjoyment in reading.
Mhm.
So,
The other thing is that some kids, you'll get to kind of start seeing learning modalities like if they're lying on the floor just listening to the audiobook, chances are you've got a really auditory learner and they're going to do better with oral instructions, with talking things out, working things out by talking about it. But if you have a kid who's sitting on the floor building Legos while they're listening to their audiobook, that's more indicative of a kinesthetic kid who needs to feel it. So don't think that that kid who's building with Legos isn't paying attention. They are. They're processing in the way through their hands. And
mhm.
and that is a really important because I kinesthetic learners are in their own way neurodivergent because the schools don't teach to kinesthetic. They go really fast and the only kids who can really keep up are the ones who are extremely visual and kinesthetics usually get lost. And so a lot of times it's not even a learning difference. It's just you need to slow down.
Well, and I look at, the advancement of fidget spinners. Every kid's got a fidget spinner, something that they're doing with their hand. I think that there are so many more kinesthetic learners.
Yeah.
And this is their adaptation to have those quiet fidget spinners to do those things. And I know I have things that I would call trinkets on my desk, and in reality, they're probably more fidgets. And I oftentimes, while I'm in an interview, I've got my fidgets that I am doing, and for me, that's so that I stay on track. Because if I'm not doing something, if I'm not taking notes or fidgeting with something, my brain gets gets busy, under underwhelmed, and goes and thinks of other things while I'm waiting on my turn.
Yeah.
so so finding your niche, finding what you do, I think is just so incredibly important. And Christy, thank you so much for helping me expand on this. And yes, my book we have delayed it. There were a lot of factors that came involved. Other individuals not, failing internet signal to complete the cover. There have been a whole bunch of things, and I dare say Mercury retrograde. So the book will officially now release next Tuesday, March 23rd, and that is Stepping into Power, The Intuitive Path. And I think that this is going to be a great fit for so many people as you step into your power, as you take up your space, as you claim what is yours and what you need to do.
And it's an incredible book. It'll go right here, right here. Boom. It's an
And
incredible
bring you
book.
back up, yeah, yeah, I don't want to leave anybody. It's not a sad, sappy book at all.
Nope.
And so in Transformation Tuesday, we have crazy pocket fuzzies. Yes, absolutely. What do we need to fidget with? So I'm going to draw the card for today is the Angel of Flexibility. And she says, I am ready for the surprises of life. When we are in tune with our souls, we get the inspiration that will help us not to harden or crystallize in reflection to our thoughts, concepts, and habit patterns or conditionings. When we are able to follow the flow of intelligent energy in the daily affairs of our lives with flexibility, we create an openness for the spirit within us to come and make our burden light. So I think she's pretty timely today, as the book deadline or the book release date changes yet again. It's all good. It's all good. Life is coming together. So we didn't do any theta today. We could throw in a little bit of theta to remove what prevents us from being flexible. Yeah, so remove that obligation to be rigid and remove that obligation to stay small, take up your space, step into your power. So if you'd like that, just say yes.
Yes.
We'll do the forgiveness to ourselves for continuing to stay small, the forgiveness to our higher power for allowing it to happen, and the forgiveness to all of those individuals along the way that help keep us small, knowing that that's not our best place to be. That feels big. So thank you all for joining me, especially Christy. I know I called on you late yesterday and said, hey, you want to jump in? But thank you so much for being here. Yeah. Thank you for being here. And if you want to hear about something else, certainly drop it in the comments, get a hold of me. You can contact me through amandabethhealing.com. And in the meantime, tonight on the Chronic Health Collective, the Fearless team are going to be talking with Cable and addressing just kind of how we get out of that whole fear state, which I think kind of applies to what we were talking about today, that fear of how we're going to be perceived, that we're going to be an inconvenience. So look forward to seeing everyone again next week.
Okay.
She looks like she has it all together, but inside, she's exhausted, disconnected, and asking, is this really it? I'm Amanda Beth. I help visionary women shift from burnout to embodiment, from survival mode to soulful success. Through intuitive healing and aligned strategy, I guide them back to their power so they can lead with clarity, confidence, and calm.
I was floored at how effective and powerful and insightful everything was in this journey. She is amazing, and you should absolutely do it.
This isn't about pushing harder. This is about rising with purpose, prosperity, and peace.